in the next couple of days I've got some charters coming up, some guided fishing charters, and trolling has been working really well in the Fitzroy lately. It's a great technique and easy to control a lot of the variables, and certainly the barramundi and king threadfin are easily caught when using this method. So I'm already getting really good results, but what I want to do, I guess the scientist coming out in me, is to better understand and control some of the variables associated with the trolling. So a few things that I'm going to do to control that is I've got a bunch of different lures. They're all the same kind of lures, and these lures run at 6 different depths. So we have got 6 foot, 8 foot, 10 foot, 15 foot, 18 foot and 20 foot. So this will give me a lot more control in being able to target a particular depth by using the lure, and that's great. But I just want to take it one step further, and I'm going to do some field testing now. I'm going to go out in the field and actually determine and confirm each of the different depths that these run, and take out some of the variables. So here I've got one of the outfits that I use. So I run a lot of the same gear in terms of the size of the braid, and the benefit of that is one of the variables obviously with trolling is the thickness of the line. So the thicker the line, the less it's likely to cut through the water, and so therefore that impacts on the depth that the lure will be able to be run at. And obviously the amount of line that you release, the amount of line that you let out, also impacts on the depth. So in the charters I run for the trolling, I use the same thickness of line, the same poundage of line, and then what I've done is I've actually marked up where a certain meterage is. I've decided on 35 metres. I don't think it matters all that much. You just want enough line out that the lure is going to go down readily. You don't want it to be too close, you don't want it to be too far back. So 35 metres, I'm going to use that as a way to control another of the variables in terms of the amount of line that's let out. So when I go out into the field, I'm going to get the recordings with that marker right there at the reel. For these I use Corrados. They're great, strong, reliable reels. And the benefit of that too is when I'm talking to the clients, I'll be able to tell them to run line out until they reach this this mark that I've just put in with a texter. So what I'm going to do now is take those 6 different lures, and I'm going to go out into the field and do some field testing and calibrate them. And we need to calibrate them obviously because each of the different sounders reads a little bit differently. Sounders usually have a setup where you can do a depth offset. That's one option. The other option obviously is to do what I'm doing now and just go and work the lures till I know where they're just on the bottom. Things like idle speed as well have a big impact from boat to boat. Different boats have different idle speeds, so I'll calibrate this based on and understand exactly the depth that each of these different lures go based on the idle speed of the boat that I'm using. We talked about line thickness already, but obviously it's going to change depending on the thickness of line and how much line's let out, so I'm able to control those variables with this. And obviously tidal flow, so the way in which you troll, whether you're trolling with the tide or against the tide, is also going to impact on how much that bib digs in. Righto, we're on the water now. going to start the testing. I'm going to work from shallow into deep. So I'm going to start with the 6 foot, run that, and then work my way through up to 20 foot and do the calibration and see what the sounder reads for each of the different lures. So this is the first one to go. So I picked a muddy bottom, running at about 2.5 metres, just coming up at the moment. That lure is just bouncing along the bottom at 2.5. I've now done all my runs, I've finished my calibration, and I just thought I'd give you a bit of a wrap before I head in to the ramp. So we had 6 different sizes, if you remember earlier, and they ranged from 6 foot, which is roughly 1.8 metres, up to 20 foot, which is works out to about 6 metres. And so what I found, the brand that I've used is the Barra Classics 120 range, and the 6 foots, what they did is they ran just a little bit more than the 1.8 metres. Generally I found they ran 2 to 2.5 metres before they started banging along the bottom, depending on the tide and the direction. And then moving up to the 8 foot, they also ran a bit deeper than the 2.4 metres that 8 foot represents. They sort of worked out to around 2.5 to 3 metres that they were when they started bumping along the bottom. For the 10 foot, which is 3 metres, they were pretty close to the mark. They touched around the 3 to 3.5 metres, depending on if the rod tip was on the waterline or a little bit higher. The 15 foot, so 4.5 metres, it also ran pretty true. It was probably closer to 4 to 4.5 metres, so a touch under. I had also 18 foot model, which works out to 5.4 metres. The interesting thing about that though was it really didn't start touching the bottom till 3 metres, so I'm not sure what's going on with that. It is a little bit of a different bib design than the others in the Barra Classics, but something really interesting, I guess, from my perspective, that I probably wouldn't run that and think that I was going to get 5.4 metres. And then finally the 20 foot model, so 6 metres, it certainly was touching out at that 5 to 6 metre mark, so it was pretty true to form. So I'm really happy with the results that I've got. Obviously, if you were looking at this and considering about using this information for your own fishing, the reality is that there's so many variables. If I was using a lighter line or a heavier line, these figures may be totally different. Remembering that I'm looking at sounder here that hasn't got a depth offset, and so the keel placement of the sounder as it relates to the keel is going to be influenced, and also the amount of line that I'm letting out is going to impact on just how deep those lures are getting to. A shorter amount of line is not going to get the lure down as far. A longer amount of line than the 35 metres that I was running might have ended up meaning that you got the lure further back down. So I hope you got something out of this. I certainly have, and I can't wait to use this information and the calibration that I've done for this particular lure in my circumstance to try and help get more clients onto fish more often. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop us a line or drop us a message, and I'll do my best to answer them.